gonna say it. Somebody should. Let's talk about two time. Let's talk about bum wine, yeah. You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where the bone thugs and are they in harmony? Help for Snowman.
Well, hey everybody, how you doing? How you doing? When have I ever started this by saying, how you doing? That is not a thing that I say. I don't know why I did that. I am so sorry. I am so fucking sorry. Welcome to another episode of this show. Today we have a little thing. I came up with this idea today, which isn't really an idea I can use, but this is for the other podcasters out there. Yo, this is for all the podcasters out there who said I couldn't make it, and you were correct. But I do have an idea for you that you might enjoy. So give it a whirl. Yo, here's the idea. Okay. I listened to another show called Tell 'em Steve Dave. I used to have a rule on this show when I had guests on this show that we don't talk about other podcasts on this show. We just don't do it. It's kind of like the opposite of Fight Club. You know, Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. And on this podcast, you don't talk about anything but this podcast. But that was just more, I don't know. I guess at that time I was like, I don't want to talk about what other podcasts have done or how they do it or that kind of thing. Also, maybe because early on in the podcast days, I was like, I don't really want to talk about podcasting on the podcast, if that's possible. But I guess I've just, lost all morality or whatever. And now I'm like, fuck it. I listened to Tell 'em Steve Dave. And I enjoy it. I have really nothing to say about it other than I really like it. It's just like three older guys sitting around talking about their lives. And, it's kind of, in some ways, it's like the quintessential podcast that, people make fun of, which is like, well, three white dudes got together and started talking about stuff. You know what I mean? But I kind of think most people, well, okay. I shouldn't say most people. I should say this. I am one of white dudes. And so, three white dudes sitting around talking about stuff is probably the fact that they are similar to me in gender and race demographics isn't a negative for me, just as a listener. It's weird. They don't really talk about much other than their sort of lives and their own foibles and stuff like that. And I find that very entertaining, and it's like, it's something I've listened to for so long now that, you just kind of like, oh yeah, I wonder how how Walt's dog Socks is doing. You know what I mean? I wonder how that guy's doing. You hear another story about Socks and you're like, oh, good old Socks. So, anyway, I don't know. I think I'm saying all this stuff about it because, so I got on the Tell 'em Steve Dave subreddit in the past, and it has repelled me from Reddit in the past, because I hate it so much. You go on there and basically from the subreddit, you would think that everyone doing that fucking hates the show. Everyone on the subreddit hates the show. Now, it's fine to hate the show, right? Totally fine to hate a show. Totally fine to not be interested in something. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. It's like this show, incredibly optional, right? That's something I've always said about this show, is that it's like so optional that I don't really understand when people get upset about stuff. because it's like, it's not unavoidable. You know, it's not unavoidable in the way, even I'm trying to think of something that's a little more unavoidable than like an average podcast, like NPR or something. I guess it's possible you would hear NPR playing somewhere. A podcast is like, I don't know how you would listen to a podcast without having made at least some effort to listen to a podcast. And so if you're listening to a podcast and like, okay, have I heard podcasts that I didn't really enjoy? Yeah, I sure have. You know what I've never done? For example, I've never gotten onto the Joe Rogan subreddit. Do I dare? The Joe Rogan Experience. Let's just see. What do you think the topics are? By the end of the week, MAGA will be fully pro Epstein. All right. Joe Rogan scolds Brian Callen for challenging his views on vaccines. An image from Epstein's birthday binder appears to depict Mar-a-Lago. There's a really quite hilarious drawing. I don't know what the hell that is. Trump. Things that take... Why is this all about Trump? Did he have Trump on or something? Joe Rogan tricked by AI video of Tim Walz dancing, then finds out it's fake. But it doesn't matter because he believes he would be that stupid to do that. RFK Jr.'s polio vaccine conspiracy theory debunked in 2 minutes. Okay, this is interesting. Well, not interesting, but it's funny because I'm like, what I complain about with Tell 'em Steve Dave's subreddit is like exactly what's happening on Joe Rogan's subreddit. I kind of thought I would go there and be seeing things like, does anyone know the Huberman protocol for, first thing in the morning? By the way, I had an idea, one of these days, I need to do a podcast about my protocol. I'm going to write this down. I'm writing it in pencil, though. I guess I'm not that sure about it. Because I was like, there should be the Pete protocol, the PETA-call. Because I was like, look, I'm not a health expert, but neither's that guy. And also, I was like, well, listen, maybe you want to be like the uber male awesomest guy ever. But, maybe you're like in a really shitty spot health-wise, right? So shitty that where I am is better than you. Now, if that's the case, if you are more depressed and, infirm than I am, boy, do you have problems. But, if that's the case, maybe what you need is like, maybe you need stair-step protocols, right? You can't just jump in and do this like 50-step ultimate protocol and be doing cold plunges and delaying caffeine intake and red light therapy and magnets and whatever the hell. Taking 80 supplements. Maybe it's like you just need my protocol. You know what I mean? And it's just like, well, instead of having tortilla chips before bed, you've switched to carrot chips, which are really salty and not that satisfying, but it's something. You know what I'm saying? Not an optimized, it's a suboptimal life. That's Pete's suboptimal protocol. I'm writing it down. Suboptimal protocol. Make a nice PDF for everyone. That's how you know it's official. I'll be like, if you give me your email address and a scanned copy of your driver's license, I'll send you this protocol. Just send in your social security card, front and back. And your list of passwords from Google Password Manager, and in exchange, I'll send you this protocol. But maybe it just brings you up to that level, and then from there you could go further. Because if you're below me, I don't think you should be starting. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing 75 hard tomorrow if you're worse off than I am. You should try like maybe 1 hard, and then maybe then you could try like 5 hard. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm shocked, and I don't know why I'm shocked. I shouldn't be, I guess, but I was shocked to just now discover that the Joe Rogan subreddit doesn't seem to particularly like or agree with Joe Rogan. Although I guess I should have known that, right? Because that's kind of the whole thing that I see with this other Tell 'em Steve Dave subreddit. You would think when you go on there that these people were forced to listen to this like as a school assignment, and they're still mad about it. Or like you would think, I'm very suspicious. There's one guy who posts on this subreddit all the time, and it doesn't matter what the original post is about. He'll figure out some way to turn it on one of the three hosts of the podcast, right? And be like, oh yeah, well that guy did this. You know what I mean? Or speaking of that topic, what about the time that guy did this? And it's like, no one was talking about that, dude. Come on. But he'll figure out a way to do it. And I'm almost suspicious that like this is someone who knows him personally. And I'm like, either maybe this is like his brother, and his brother is just like the ultimate troll, which would be pretty funny. You know what I mean? If he did this for like years ruthlessly and then finally revealed like that's been me the whole time. But it's either that or I was like, I wonder if this guy, you know, the podcast host like married this guy's old girlfriend that he still has a thing for or something. You know what I mean? It's reached a level that I'm like, you are so personally invested in the takedown of this individual for nothing particularly wrong. You know what I mean? There's nothing. It's not like I'm defending a guy who's a horrific criminal or something like that. It's just like he's just like a normal person who's on a podcast, I guess. It's very odd. And so I just find it weird because oftentimes people will post things that others react with some form of like, you know, you could just not listen to it. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, or you could just not post about it. You could just dislike something and then that be the end of it. But instead, you know, they post on there, and usually the reaction of someone who's like given that idea of, you know, you could just like not think or talk about it. Usually their reaction is along the lines of like, fuck you. I have a right to free speech and to say what I want and whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Yeah, no one is asserting that you don't have the right to do that. You know what I mean? No one's like, we are going to come to your house. We're going to kick the door down and drag you out of your house because you're saying you didn't like this episode of a show and you seem to have a grudge against this gentleman. Nobody's saying that. What everyone is saying is that like, it just seems like this isn't really feeding your soul, I guess, to put it, you know, very lightly, and maybe to put it more accurately, like, seems like you kind of fucking hate it. So like, maybe this isn't the show for you. You know what I mean? Maybe this isn't your best. Maybe you're not your best self when you're listening to this. Maybe in the world of podcasts, of which there are so many podcasts. Do you know what I mean? What do you think it'll say if I'm like, how many podcasts exist? How many podcasts are there? Google's AI says 4.61 million podcasts. Podcaststatistics.com says 4.52 million podcasts. Something else says 3.5 million. Some guy on Reddit r/podcasts says I am subscribed to 355 different podcasts. Okay. Let's call it between, 3.5 and 4.5 million podcasts. That seems like, also another statistic, 90% of podcasts don't publish more than 3 episodes. It says your competition is not the 2 million podcasts, it's the 20,000 podcasters who didn't quit. Well, I'm really beating the odds on that one, huh? Anyway. Millions of more podcasts are being published, you know what I mean, than could be consumed by an individual. I bet if you stopped right now, if you like somehow created a way to completely block podcasting technology, you could not listen to all the podcasts that exist today, right? You just couldn't. So with all that in mind, it's just like, why are you listening to this? And then why are you getting mad at me when I suggest that you don't seem to be having fun listening to this? You know what I mean? But anyway, I always sort of chafe when people are like, it's my right to complain about something. Because like, I consider myself like a free speech guy, and I'm like, you're not wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to bring the law down on your head, but maybe it's not like about that. Like, I don't think anyone's challenging the right. I think it's more about like, why? Like, why would you come to a subreddit for a show that you seem to hate to complain about it? And then be sort of incensed when other people don't share your view because they came to a subreddit of a show that they like. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a weird way to sort of go through life that I don't know if I fully understand. But here's the genius idea I came up with, guys. I call it the Helpful Snowman pay to complain system. And here's how it works. If you pay for this podcast in some form, like if you are a Patreon subscriber, I happily accept your complaints. Put them on Patreon. I will read them and respond to them. I won't necessarily do what you want, but, I will acknowledge their existence. If you want to complain about a book that I wrote, show me the receipt or show me it's a verified purchase, and, I will accept your critique. I'll take it under consideration. If you want to critique the newsletters that I put out, pay for them. Pay me money, and then I will listen to that. The thing is, the comments section on all these things is open to all. However, I'm only going to actually acknowledge the existence of paying customers. And it's not because I'm going to like change anything to please people who are paying. It's because I think the way to go about this is to just say, you know what? Paying customers, what they get to pay for is the right to complain. You're paying for, it's a different tier of service. And the higher tier of service for me is going to be payment. And what you receive in return is acknowledgement of complaint. Anyone else who wants to complain about it, fuck off. Now, here's the rub is, for me, this doesn't really do much because I have 4 subscribers or something. So, their complaints, whatever. And I'm not popular enough to have like a subreddit where people complain about this because, I guess I don't think I have I think I started a subreddit once, but, it cannot still exist, can it? Let's see. Let's see what's on there. Oh, yep. 4 years ago, I posted something about Charles Entertainment cheese. Oh, I posted a Lit Reactor article. It turns out you can write something on a potato and mail it. Looks like I just basically posted. I think I'm the only one who posted on here. I haven't seen any comments yet. Oh my God. Scrolling back so far. October 2020. Yeah. It goes back to 8 years ago. And it looks like I have 1 weekly visitor. Also, the account that made it, my account, my Reddit account is deleted. So I guess I could request to post. Should I do it and just see what happens? I mean, how would that work? If I don't exist anymore. It was created November 4th, 2017. Interesting. Okay, so no one cares enough to comment on my subreddit, positive or negative. But this is what I'm suggesting to others, to tell them Steve Daves of the world, and I guess the Joe Rogans of the world, is just make it so that if people want to complain, they can pay. And if they don't want to complain, then it's free. I feel like this is like a new way to make money from podcasts that people really need to explore, to make money from the internet in general. You want to complain about a YouTube video? Show me the receipts, baby. Show me that you paid. And I'll happily listen. But if you used an ad blocker or whatever, if you're not like a paid subscriber of some kind or whatever. And by the way, I'm offering a great deal, which is like you can pay for any one thing and then complain about any other thing. Patreon subscribers could complain about books, book buyers can complain about podcasts. As the owner of a media empire. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with people, you know what I mean? Crossing streams that way. That's totally fine with me. It kind of came up because I was looking at things on this subreddit, and it brought up the topic of dynamic ad insertions. I think that's what they're called. So for people who don't know, there is some new podcast technology. So, since podcast time memorial, but, old, you could do ads on a podcast, right? And you would either drop in an ad, or maybe you would do a live read, or, whatever. Maybe sometimes it was like the host doing a read and then they dropped in the file later. Sometimes if it's like an NPR podcast, it's just at the beginning. Sometimes if it's like Conan O'Brien has a new best friend, it's like dropped in there and you're like, what the fuck, man? Like you don't have enough money. There's not a better way for you to make money off this than doing an ad for like Squarespace. And like, by the way, advertisers for podcasts are dumb. Because like, do you think that I think that Conan O'Brien has made a Squarespace website? Do you really think that is remotely plausible? That Conan is sitting around, his long arms and legs branching out from a chair. It's like watching Groot sit down in a kindergartner's school chair at one of those little desks where the desk is attached to the chair. His knees up above his chin line. And he's sitting there with a laptop, his spindly fingers thrashing away at the keyboard, do you think he built a website for the podcast? I mean, maybe he did. It's not impossible, right? I'm not impugning the good name of Conan O'Brien, but I guess I am making fun of him a bit. Just his physical appearance, though, not his technological capabilities. I would never. That's going too far. But like, Squarespace, build it beautiful. And I'm like, okay, sure. Or, you hear these ads and I'm supposed to believe it's like somebody's just talking about how great the sriracha cashews are for, Nature Box. And then I click over to another podcast. Like these podcast advertisers don't realize, I guess, that like, surely I'm not the only person on earth who listens to more than one podcast. So when all these different hosts are like, boy, I sure love those sriracha cashews. It's like, okay, well, I can see, you can see the edge of the world, and you're playing like a Grand Theft Auto game and you hit the seam, you hit the edge. That's what happens, right? When you hear the same ad read for the same product on two completely different shows. But anyway, and I know I'm not the only person. I can't be the only maniac who is obsessed with that. Well, that one guy listens to 355 podcasts. I mean, that's just craziness, right? That must just be like, I'm just going to listen to, that would be amazing to just listen to a different podcast every day for a year. You know what I mean? Just a new podcast every day and just be like, I'll just try this, I guess. Just see what happens. Fuck it. You know what I mean? Probably you'd find something you liked. In theory. I mean, it on the one hand, the possibilities are so endless, right? With 3 or 4 million podcasts out there, it's like, well, yeah, something has to be good, right? But at the same time, nothing has to be good. I mean, okay, I worked at a library, and like you can walk the stacks and just be like marvel at the number of books, right? But like after you work there long enough, and you know, if you're even a little cynical as a human being, you go long enough and you start being like, I mean, there's a lot of books here, and that is amazing after a fashion, and I know a lot of these are a piece of shit. You know, like a lot of these books are not good. Just because it's on the shelf, you know, you go to Barnes and Noble and it's like, wow, I'm surrounded by literature. And you're like, yeah, but I mean, it's actually very possible that like 50 of these are anything you'd even kind of want to read. By the way, I Googled how many podcasts are there just now. I Googled like a week ago, I think the dumbest thing I've ever Googled. So Poonmaster Flex, there was a spider in her bathroom. I captured it in our bug cup. Don't fucking comment on how a spider's not a bug, unless you're a Patreon subscriber. I put it in the bug cup. It's fine. Guys, it's a cup we use in our own fucking house. Don't correct me. Hate that. Put it in the bug cup, slid the postcard over the top of the bug cup, and then took the spider and threw it in the bushes outside, clear of the house. I don't think that kills a spider if you like toss it with some force. You know, you want to like toss the cup out like you're tossing a liquid out of the cup, but with enough force to make sure the Spidey's not like clinging to the side still. But you don't want to rocket to the crypt. You know what I mean? Anyway, I did that, and then over the next several weeks, she's found some baby Spideys in her bathroom where the big Spidey was. And so this has somehow turned into my fault because I didn't kill the original Spidey. Because she's very much of the policy of if they're in the house, they have to die. And, you know, I used to be that way. And then I've softened as I've aged because I don't know. I guess I just think my death is coming. I'm like, well, it'd be a shame if some large creature just saw me and just splatted me for no real reason. Because it just didn't like how I looked, which would be fair. But I'd be like, you could just put me in a bug cup. I wouldn't even complain to you that I'm not a bug. I would just accept it. I would accept that in this scenario, I'm not a bug, but a bug cup is a fine fate for me. So anyway, she was talking about, you know, she's kind of like, it's your fault that this went this way or whatever. And I was like, I don't agree with that, you know, whatever. And I was like, I don't think a spider can like get back to where it was, right? Like it can't find its previous spot again, can it? And so I just, you know, and basically I was like, does a spider even really know what's happening? You know what I mean? When I take it, put it in the bug cup, take it downstairs and throw it outside, does it like know what just happened? Is it just like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Is it like if I got abducted by aliens and just woke up in Ohio and I would have no idea where I was, no idea how I got there. And, you know, if I had the sort of internet access of the average spider, I would not be able to figure out where I was, right? So in order to understand if there's any science about this, I Googled, do spiders know where they are? What I was trying to get at is like, let's say a spider is put in a bug cup and moved into another room. Do you think, would the spider return to its previous spot? Does a spider have the capability to be moved to a new spot, evaluate that spot, and then say, nah, not for me. I prefer the old spot. Can spiders have a preference? Do you know what I'm saying? Like all these different things, right? So I Googled, do spiders know where they are? I think the consensus was no. Again, a subreddit. I guess a spider-related subreddit, which seemed to be populated by non-fans of spiders as well, said, no, it can't. It's a spider. Which I was like, that's both a dismissive answer and, kind of correct. It has a certain blunt charm to it. No, it doesn't. It's a spider. And I was like, yeah, it is a spider. They make a good point. Anyway, that's the dumbest thing I think I've ever Googled, though. It's just like, when they used to, how they used to make those lists of like the crazy things people search, which now I guess would be no fun because it would just be like, can measles be deleted by Vaseline? It would be like, oh God. Anyway, back to the idea here. Dynamic ad insertion. So we talked about how different ads play on different podcasts and the different methods by which they did that. Dynamic ad insertion, as I understand it, would let me do this. I could basically drop in a marker where I want ads to go in my podcast. And then I could record a separate file for an ad. Like, let's say a 1-minute Nature Box ad where I talk about sriracha cashews and boy, yumma dum dum. And then I put that dynamic ad file into basically Dropbox. And what it would do is place that ad into every episode of the podcast in which I've put a marker for a dynamic ad. So maybe I always put the marker at like the 15-minute mark. And it would drop that ad in at the 15-minute mark. Or maybe I'm like thoughtful about it and I'm like, well, for each episode I put the dynamic ad markers in different spots where it's, where it makes sense, where it's good. And what it can do is go back in time and drop it into any episode in which I've put the marker. So, for example, in the past, if I had a deal with MeUndies and I recorded a podcast and that ad was in there, it's just kind of in there for all time, right? It's just baked in. And so somebody downloads that episode 10 years later and it's still in there. But now what I can do is basically sell the ad space. So I put in the marker and MeUndies is like, let's strike up a deal. And I say, great. And I say, well, so here's the rates. And this is what I like about dynamic ad insertion. I'm going to say something nice about ads that I don't want to, but here we go. I could charge MeUndies and say, okay, well, here's how much it costs to have your ad in my newest episode. I could say, here's how much it costs to have it in the next 5 episodes. I could also say, you could pay me this much and I'll use my dynamic ad insertion and put it in my entire back catalog. So anyone who listens to an older episode during a certain window will hear it. But the other thing, the way it really empowers the podcaster is also when I do an ad for someone, I can say, well, I'll run your ads for 30 days. You know what I mean? Your ad will be in the next 5 episodes and it will run for 30 days after the last of those 5 episodes premieres. But then I'm going to put something else in that space. So if you want to continue to have a relationship, you got to re-up with me. If you don't, then fuck off, I guess. We'll shake hands, tell each other to fuck off, and go our different way. So here's what I like. I like this for the podcaster. If the podcaster's doing it, because what it means is they have a little bit more control over the ads and the ad dollars and the ad placement. And, it gives them a little bit more ability to advocate for what they're worth, basically. Whereas before it was like, well, because I think a lot of people do listen to previous episodes of a show, right? Especially a show like if you think about Serial or like Sold the Story or something like that. One of those shows where it's like the episodes are part of a limited series and they build on each other. People go and listen to the old episodes all the time, right? Because they find it as a new podcast to them and they go back and listen to the old stuff. I don't think anyone listens to like Sold the Story episode 4 and then it's just like, yeah, done. Good enough. So, that's why I like that. But here's what I don't like. I think what may be happening is that some platforms are doing dynamic ad insertion, by which I mean I think sometimes when you download from certain platforms, they may be adding in ads. Now, I'm not sure about this, but if that exists, and if you're hearing ads on this show, other than my fake ads for like sriracha cashews, oh boy, what a delicious treat. Who would have thought of combining that weird sauce that I guess is made out of a rooster with the salty deliciousness of a nice cashew? Who would have thought that, the humble cashew nut would have been so enhanced by the delicious red paste that is sriracha? Only the geniuses at nature. Okay. If you're hearing things like that, other than that kind of bullshit, I have nothing to do with it and I am not making a dime off of it. And you should use a different way to get your podcasts, probably, unless you're really in love with them. Because here's the problem with that kind of ad insertion benefiting the platform as opposed to benefiting the podcaster. Platforms should be making money by doing what they do, which is hosting files, okay, or hosting feeds. A platform like SoundCloud can make money by charging to host files, but also it makes money from podcasters because if podcaster A is using it and brings in a lot of users, they may also spread, to podcast B, who also then will have more listeners and want to put up more files and then, give SoundCloud more business, right? That's kind of the basic model. When I pay for my web hosting every year, it's a flat fee, right? Like it's based on how many megabytes of files you have. And mine went up because I have too many files. I should have quit 2 or 3 episodes in, instead of being one of the 20,000 podcasts that, decided to forge ahead. But, so I know what it costs to store my podcasts, right? And when you add those dynamic ad insertions as a platform, you're making more money from someone else's work, but they don't have any say in it and they don't benefit from it. So in other words, it's like, to me, it's like this. Let's say I painted a painting and I put it on consignment in a gallery, right? And you're going to sell it. But then you're like, there's a wealthy guy coming who, if I paint him into your painting, he'll buy it, but also he'll just pay me $1,000 just for painting him into your painting. I probably would say, so how much of that $1,000 do I get? Because as much as I would be a proud artist, I would also be like, well, look, if I'm getting half of that money, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to paint the guy in. All I have to do is say, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want, and I get $500. I'm probably going to do that. But if you're like, well, I just get the money, and you get the advertisement of me of being in the gallery. And I'm like, but I thought the consignment fee was kind of the agreement for the gallery. And they're like, yeah, but this is a way for me to make a little more money. It's hard to be a gallery, Anyway, this tortured analogy, the point being is I'm like, this is platforms making money by doing nothing. And I don't like that. Okay, so I have a little Pete old man story for everybody. It's a story of betrayal. It's a story of poor restaurant reviews. It's a story of steaks, high stakes, and New York strip steaks. So it was my mom's birthday a little bit ago, and she picked a restaurant to eat at. And she was picking between a couple restaurants, and one of the options she gave was a steak place. And she told me she would get a Reuben sandwich there, which I didn't understand. I wasn't sure why she told me what she would get there. She didn't tell me what she would get at the other, like the Indian restaurant. There was no chicken vindaloo with that one. But I guess here's my guess. And I should just ask my mom about it, but it's more fun for me to speculate. My guess was she doesn't eat steak, to my knowledge. Doesn't care for it, really. So maybe she thought I would be wondering, why is she picking a steak place? Which I did a little bit. And then when she said she's getting a Reuben, I was like, why is she telling me she's getting a Reuben? And then I was like, well, and why are we going to a steak place for a Reuben? And I had many thoughts, and it was very diverting. And, these moms are the gift that keep on giving. They give their all to you as a child, and then as an adult, they just make you ponder things. And, I didn't think to ask at the time. I wasn't like, this wasn't like burning in my brain. It was just like on the very back burner of my brain for like a week. I was like, I wonder why. She told me that. I don't know. But also it was one of those things that I was like, yeah, get the Reuben. Why not? I also thought like, maybe she's telling me this because, she doesn't want me to worry that this is going to be an expensive dinner or something. Like I'm going to get a reasonably priced entree. I'm not going to get like some $180 tomahawk steak or something, which I was like, I kind of assumed you wouldn't, but even if you did, I think I would be so entertained by that I would also be fine with it. It would be worth $180 to see them set that in front of my mom, and then what happens next? I'd be like, who's going to flinch first on this joke? Me or you? Probably not me. But maybe me. Maybe I'm going to be like, are you sure? She's trying to cut into it, and I don't know. And it's like Fred Flintstone. It would tip over Fred Flintstone's car or something. So we go to a steak place, but for a Reuben. Now, I made a reservation because she told me that you had to make reservations at this place, according to their website. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I make a reservation for 6 p.m. on a Thursday. And I think I made the reservation like 1 or 2 days before we were going. Because I was like, 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. I don't think this is going to be like a crazy busy time. And, if it's a restaurant, it'll probably be fine. And if I can't make it for exactly the time I want, I bet I can get something pretty close. So I make the reservation. But in order to make the reservation, I have to put in my name, my email, and my phone number. Now, I kind of thought I would get the choice email or phone number. But you have to put in both. And I found this a little annoying. And as I was making the reservation on their Resi system, it was like, I was immediately thinking, okay, here we go, Whiskey Steaks, Fort Collins. If you contact me in any way about this reservation, in any way that I find dissatisfying, you're getting that 1-star review, fuckers. I don't care if this is the most amazing Reuben sandwich on the planet. You're getting that 1 star. I don't care if it's the best tomahawk steak on the planet, and my mom eats the whole thing in under an hour and gets it for free or something. Doesn't really seem like this is that kind of place. I mean, when you have super expensive whiskeys, I feel like that's not the same kind of place, right? When you're like, this is $100 for like an ounce and a half of whiskey. That would be a terrible promotion to have at a bar. If you can drink 9 beers within an hour, you can have them for free. What a terrible idea that would be. See, that's the thing, right? Because when we're talking about booze, it's like obvious what a bad idea that is. But when we're talking about food, it's like, yeah, it's fine. I was listening to the aforementioned Tell 'em Steve Dave. They went to a diner that had like a challenge burger. It's like a giant burger that you could share, like 5 people could go work on it together. But here's the thing I think that people don't understand about these food eating challenges like that. You don't really want to eat like a huge hamburger because it's going to taste like shit. You know what I mean? If the bun is at like 7 inches tall, just the top bun, you're just going to be eating handfuls of bread at first, right? You can't really eat that as a burger. And, you know, they can't really cook a burger like that properly. And what are they going to do? Put like 8 pounds of salt and pepper on it? Like, no, they're going to put barely any seasoning on it. It's going to taste like shit. It's a terrible idea. It's probably not even going to be warm by the time it hits the table, right? And in order to cook through a piece of meat like that, you kind of have to like burn the outside and then the inside's barely done. Like, you don't want it, you know? Instead of the free meal, maybe just save up a little bit and then go and just get 2 burgers if you're that hungry a boy. You know what I'm saying? Just, I don't know. There has to be a better way, is Pete's opinion. So we go, I make the reservation. With reservations, I make the reservation. I immediately get a confirmation email. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let that one slide. Because I was like, okay, that's fair. Confirmation email is fair. It did try to get me to download the Resi app. And I was like, fuck you. I'm not downloading an app for one dinner. That's insane. That would be an insane thing to do. The only time I ever download an app in a situation like that is like, you know, when you got to download the Ticketmaster app to go to a concert because they're like, I mean, basically it's the only way to do it. And you're like, all right, fine, I'll do it. But that's just because they have you by the balls. You have no choice. You could never, you have no other option. So, and you know, it didn't appear that I needed to download the app, so I didn't. So then I get a text the day before. So I make the reservation. The next day I get a text saying, confirm your reservation. Send a 1 to confirm or a 3 to cancel. Now, there were so many things about this that I found annoying. Okay. First and foremost, what the fuck kind of insane system is 1 and 3 to mean yes or no? How is that a system? That's like a system that would be a holdover from a touch tone phone sort of situation, except it's a text message. So in order to send you a 1 or a 3 versus, say, sending you a Y or an N for yes or no, just in case I'm going too fast for anyone here, I have to push another extra button, the shift button, to send you a 1 or a 3, whereas a Y or an N is right there. In addition, Y or N, yes or no, is a lot more traditional answer than 1 or 3. If someone said, hey, are we still on for plans later today? And I said 1. What? 3. What does that mean? Y or N? It's not that hard, guys. Also frustrating because I was like, I made this reservation yesterday. I don't think my life is not so dynamic as my ad insertions where it changes in 24 hours. And I'm like, just kidding. Don't need this reservation. Go ahead and cancel it now. I'll say two things about this. One, I'm sure the system is programmed to just send you a reminder the day before and to ask you to confirm or deny your reservation. And I'm sure it's just because I did it the day before, it seems dumb, where if I'd done it maybe 2 weeks prior, it would seem not as dumb or annoying. And I kind of don't care because I'm like, well, I think this system is more sophisticated than you guys think, which I will get to in a moment. But also, the real thing that I found annoying about it was I was like, I called, or, I did the online reservation form, right? And now you've texted me to basically say, here's a reservation. Do you want it or not? And I'm like, well, why the fuck did I make the first reservation then? If you're asking me, do you still want this? Now, I understand this is for the lowest common denominator. And when you work in something like a restaurant, you have to, that's who, most of your customers are the worst people. They wrote those dumb books that are in the library. You know what I mean? They're going to celebrate with a steak dinner that their terrible mystery novel has been added to the library's collection. Hurrah. But I just like, as a person who works with the public, I'm like, I understand. I understand the lowest common denominator thinking and like, this will help. And at the same time, I'm always an advocate for, can we do things that don't annoy the shit out of people who are like attempting to do this the right way? You know what I mean? Is there a different way we could do this so that we don't have to force people to text us again? Whiskey Steaks, I'm not your fucking friend. I don't need to text you multiple times about the plans we have. Okay? I made a reservation like 48 hours ago. I'll see you then. Okay, we don't need to text. And I was like, what happens if I don't respond to this text? You know what I mean? Because that was my first instinct, is I was like, well, fuck it. I'll just be like, yeah, I'm not answering that. Right? Fuck it. But then I was like, well, what if that cancels the reservation? That would be kind of a bummer on my mom's birthday. That wouldn't be ideal. So I responded. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to allow that this is lowest common denominator problem. I'm going to allow that they probably have a lot of people who just don't show up, and this is the way they're trying to fix it. I'm going to allow that this is probably just some idiot, made this way and doesn't know what he's doing. But if I get one more thing from you, that's it. Cut to the next day. I'm driving to the place, and 30 minutes before my reservation starts, I get another text that's telling me, your reservation starts in 30 minutes. Now, here's another aspect of this that we need to cover. When I fill out an online form to tell you I'm coming to your restaurant, don't communicate with me by a different vector. Send me an email. If I email you, you email me back. If I text you, you text me back. If I call you, you call me back. Okay, this is Grandpa Pete, but here's where that frustration comes from. Okay. Occasionally I have a sports injury and I go to this orthopedic center, right? And here's what I've discovered about the orthopedic center. They have an online, says it's online booking, but it's absolutely not online booking. What it is a thing that you fill out, and then that prompts someone from the office to call you. And when they call you, they just, you start from scratch. You know what I mean? It's not like they're like, I see you said this and that. They're just like, okay, well, you filled out the form. What do you want? You're like, okay. And then you have a conversation with them and you schedule it and whatever. And by the end of it, you're like, well, I guess what I should have done was just fucking call you in the first place. I filled out an online form because I'm an elder millennial and I fear the telephone. I would much rather fill out an online form. That's much easier for me. and it fits into my day. You know what I mean? So they call me back. I miss the call because I'm working, and they call you during, working hours. So then I call them back, and then I'm on hold for a half hour, and I finally get in touch with them. And the whole time I'm on hold, it's saying, fill out our online appointment thing and our staff will call you. In Soviet Russia, staff call you. And I was like, well, I did that before. Here's the problem. I could either just sit on hold for the next half hour and talk to you, or I guess what I could do is fill out the form. Then you would call me, but then I kind of am half waiting for you at all times, right? Once it's, I guess, 7 p.m., I can assume you're not going to call, but you could call me at like any time, right? How does that make any sense? It doesn't. I don't think that works, guys. I don't think this is a good system. And my frustration with it is this. If the online reservation system isn't an online reservation system, just don't offer it. Just don't give me the option. Just be like, you have to call, and then I'll be like, fine. You know what I mean? I'll gird my loins, whatever the hell that means. I'll have the disease GERD and then shit all over the place, and I will call you. Maybe while I'm shitting. It's convenient. Anyway, so, with this Resi app is texting me like we're friends, like we're buds, even though I'm like, I filled out an online form. I really do not want texts from you. So, we go, we have the food. It's fine. We have a nice time, right? And then I was just going to let it go because I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, it's not worth my energy. It's not worth my time. I'm just going to let it go. Then into my inbox pops an email from Whiskey Steaks asking me to rate my experience. And I was like, well, now you forced my hand. And I had to give them a 1-star review, which I know is meaningless. I'm talking about it like it's I'm the New York Times food critic. But I gave them a 1-star review and specifically said it's 100% about the reservation system and has nothing to do with the food or the service. But I learned some things about this reservation system and reservation systems like it. For one, Resi, the reservation system they use, is owned by American Express, Amex. So what that means is when I'm using the system, I'm giving information to Amex. Amex now has information about me, including where I may like to eat, at what time, what days, what part of the country, my name, email, and phone number. And I'm like, well, you know what? If I called in and there's just some lady and she's like, what's your phone number for your reservation? I really don't have a problem, and I hear a pencil scratching onto paper. I don't have a problem with that, right? I'm like, well, what's she going to do? Lose the list blows out the window and into some kid's hands and he decides to prank everyone on the list, in which case I'd be like, well, I wish that hadn't happened to me, but it's pretty funny. No, that's not going to happen, right? Giving Amex my information, not really something I'm keen on, not something I love. I also learned that these apps, these restaurant apps, so these are apparently very popular in places like Manhattan, where, I suppose it could be difficult to get into super hip restaurants, which is fucking stupid, right? It's like, okay, I get it. Like maybe people want to go to a fancy dinner, eat at the place or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, there have to be more great restaurants there per capita than like anywhere, right? You really, you're going to like spend all this time on this app. And I found out, so if you have certain types of American Express cards, it increases your ability to get reservations for good restaurants. And one of the cards that was specifically talked about was a card that has like something like a $5,000 annual fee or something like that. And I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You know, I was horrified. Or like a $5,000 initiation fee and then like a $1,000 annual fee or something like that. And I was like, for what? You know, I don't understand these things. I'm not like a real adult in that way. I was just disgusted. I was like, the fact that that's even something a person can have is crazy. You know what I mean? Like the fact who looks at something like a credit card that costs you money just to have, you don't even use it and it costs you that much. And they're like, that's the card for me. Now, here's what I'm going to assume. I'm going to assume that those kind of cards are for people who are like, you know, making millions of dollars, right? And if you're making millions of dollars, I guess you need access to more credit than I have, because I guess you're buying things on credit like $400 restaurant reservations. Here's another thing I discovered. There's a secondary market for restaurant reservations. So they profiled a guy. He'd made like $80,000 in a year by basically what he would do is like spend a shitload of time on restaurant reservation apps, buy them all up, and then resell them. So it's like StubHub, right? It's like I made a reservation and I'm selling it. But here's the big difference, guys. When StubHub started, right? StubHub, when it first got introduced, I could see it maybe being a good-hearted thing that got twisted by evil forces of capitalism. Because at the beginning, I could see StubHub being a thing where people were like, you know, if I bought concert tickets and then I couldn't go to the concert, it would be nice to be able to resell them in a legitimate way that's safe, you know, and that ensures I get the money and the person who buys them can be ensured that they're actually getting into the show, that this is a real fucking ticket. It seems like a decent thing to do, right? And of course, then the dark side is, well, then a bunch of people get on to concert ticketing, buy a shitload of tickets to shows they have zero intention of going to, and then sell them and make a profit. But at the very least, there's a minor amount of control over this. And the minor amount of control over it is, well, you're on the hook for at least that initial purchasing of those tickets, right? And like, if you don't manage to sell the tickets, you're fucked. And you're like, well, I just bought, I have 9 seats to an Eagles concert at the Sphere. Fuck. You know what I mean? With restaurant reservations, though, there's absolutely zero financial outlay initially, right? Like I just call or make it online and there I'm in and I've got it. So if I don't sell it, all I have to do is not show up. And they talked about that in the article. A restaurant was like, yeah, we have a big problem with that, of people getting these and then just never showing up. And so then, you know, we have tables that have been booked and we don't allow anyone else to use those tables. And, you know, now it's just fallow and we can't make money off of it. So we're losing money in this proposition, which I'm like, well. What a shame. What a terrible shame that is. But anyway, these two things, the ads and the resi, have something in common, which is like, everyone just needs to charge for the service they're providing and not by like selling information or doing some other bullshitty thing. Okay? If you're hosting podcasts, just tell me what that costs. Then I can decide whether or not that's a good price, or if I'm like, I think I could get it cheaper somewhere else, or if I want to host fewer files with you, and the back catalog could just vanish, and I'd be like, fuck it. As much as I'm sure most people listen to older episodes of a show they stumble upon, I'm extra sure that no one's listening to like Helpful Snowman episode 4. Resi is, I'm sure, selling my information to Amex, right? Or like Amex has my information and is selling it or using it to create marketing or do, there's a financial gain for them, right? Just fucking, if you're a restaurant, just make your prices such that you can have your own reservation system, whether that's some lady with a notebook or, a pretty simple sign-up genius or whatever the fuck kind of thing. Sign-up genius. Build it beautiful. Just make it that. And then increase your prices very slightly so that the diners are bearing the cost of that. And then I just, basically run your restaurant in such a way that you're paying for everything you need. And my information is not being sold like on a quaternary market that I'm in no control over. It just felt so dystopic. You know what I mean? And it feels dystopic because I think a thing that I really dislike is technology that's coming at us and seems convenient, but actually is not superior to the way things were before. You know what I mean? I don't really see from the customer side any advantage to the reservation app, right? Like that, I don't think that really helps me out. I guess it helps out people who have these fancy Amex cards. But at the same time, if you have that fancy Amex and you're like, now I've got access to these great reservations, you're like, buddy, if that's the advantage you were looking for, maybe you should consider that the yearly fees you're paying for this Amex are, I don't think Amex is losing money on this proposition. So something's going on, and I think you're paying for it. Just fucking charge us for your shit. Just charge us for your shit. And then, whatever. So I guess in some ways I violated my own premise here, right? Because I didn't pay for the Resi app. I didn't pay for the reservation, but I did pay for the food. So I think I only have the right to complain about the food, not the app. Fuck. Hypocrite. Once again. Hypocrite, helpful snowman. That's what's going to be all the comments on the Reddit, on the subreddit. Oh, well. Mr. Hypocrite, once again, swoops into action.
Talk about two times. Talk about bum wine.